From McLennan Park to Spy Pond, from Poets Corner to the Mystic River, we have Arlington covered. We're your neighbors, a friend you can turn to. This is ACMi News.
Hello, and welcome to our ACMi End of the Year newscast. I'm Tyler Valancourt.
And I'm Brenda Mahoney. Tonight we'll be taking a look back on some of the Arlington stories that defined the year 2019. We'll get you warmed up with a winter blast that swept through town earlier this month, and the first few days of this month as a matter of fact.
On average, 1 foot of snow blanketed Arlington over a 2-day period, and as ACMi's news director Jeff Barn found out, whether you enjoyed it or not depended on what side of the snowbank you were on.
The morning hours of December the 3rd, Mass Ave was relatively barren, save for a few brave workers taking it slow on primary and secondary roads, and of course, scores of shovelers and snowplows out in full force trying to keep up with this storm. After a 4-day Thanksgiving Day respite, students at Arlington High and Arlington Catholic had a snow day off this week. All school-related activities, including athletics, were canceled December the 3rd. Mass transit delays were minor along Arlington's main artery as crews did everything to salt and plow, staying ahead of the 2-day-long storm. Lucas Ribeiro began shoveling around the town CVS on Monday night, December the 2nd. 12 hours later, he was still at it.
And I've been shoveling for more than 12 hours, so we need to keep shoveling until the snow stops.
How's the back doing, Lucas? How's your back so far?
You know, I still need a lot of Advil.
Not everyone needs an Advil, however. Some parents dug their vehicles out early in the a.m. and took the kids to McLennan Park. Some telling us the December snow was just the right elixir to get some much-needed holiday spirit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a beautiful day, for kids, for everybody, to do outdoor exercise, right? Outdoor sports. A lot of fun.
Now, have you had to do any shoveling today, or did you dodge that one?
Yeah, we had to dig the car out, right? So, yeah, but it wasn't that bad. Yeah.
So business before pleasure.
Totally. yeah. It's a beautiful day, so yeah.
Town leaders say once the storm passes, it's now imperative for all residents to keep public walkways, fire hydrants, and catch basins clear if possible. And most importantly, hunker down and stay safe. After all, this is New England, and it's now December. And this storm, well, it clearly was the real thing.
We used to live in Canada, so this is what we expected actually. It's
expecting snow.
Yeah.
All right, so the Massachusetts is the tropics compared to Canada, correct?
Yeah, totally. It's mild.
Now that the first winter-like storm of December 2019 is nearly over, the cleanup undoubtedly begins, and that's going to take some days, maybe even weeks for some folks. Weather prognosticators predict that temperatures will be hovering around 40 degrees during the daytime. However, at night, be prepared for any refreeze, and also get used to this sight because this snow is not going away anytime soon. If you have to drive, of course, pack your patience, take precautions on the roads, and look for black ice. Oh yeah, and from here on in, make sure one of these and a scraper is within reach at all times. Why? Well, spring is more than 15 weeks away, and that's well over 100 days. And so it begins. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barnes.
DPW crews were out for the first week of December clearing parts of Broadway and Mass Ave. Town leaders say clearly this won't be the last of the snowstorms this winter.
Not by a long shot. If you have neighbors who need your help plowing through all this in the upcoming weeks, maybe even months, well, by all means, help them out. Now, let's go back to the month of June, when after nearly 70 years of uncertainty, a Korean War veteran finally came home to loved ones in Arlington. He was given full military honors for his valor in America's so-called Forgotten War, and there was one other person there to salute him, one who was with him all those years ago, halfway around the world, a fellow POW who actually buried him in Korea, and by a twist of fate, was able to be with his friend again.
George is home. He's home. That's what counts.
Present arms!
It's been called the Forgotten War, But people are remembering Sergeant George Chapatti, a 19-year-old Korean War POW. His remains recently identified and brought to family in Arlington.
Ready?
For 90-year-old Cliff Benoit, the memories of Chapatti forever with him. He's the one who buried him after he died as a fellow prisoner of war 68 years ago.
We dug a grave on the side of a hill in some farmer's lot. It was winter, and winters was sometimes 20 below. We covered him with stones, covered his body with a tarp, couldn't do anything more. And then the guards walked us back to our camp.
Benoit survived over 2 more years in the camp. At the end of the war, both being from Boston, he visited Chapatti's family, descendants of whom made a recent DNA connection to Chapatti, buried as one of the unknowns at the National Memorial Cemetery in Hawaii, known as the Punch Bowl. Sergeant Chapatti is the second Korean War POW to have his remains come through town in 3 years. He isn't from Arlington, but still townfolk coming out to show that they will not forget the service to his country.
I think it's important to honor everybody who served our country, served in a military, and did their best to protect our freedoms.
I was in the Army in the Korean conflict with 3 of my brothers. He deserves to have a special day here. You know, how they find these bodies and identify them is just fantastic. With our government following through, they don't forget you.
The story coming full circle for the Chapattis and Benoits when both families chose Keith's funeral home, Benoit's wife having died in April.
Lo and behold, they're going to be at Keith's where my mom was, and they mentioned my dad, and they were surprised he was still alive.
Did you know of this story before?
No, I didn't. He never talked about any of this stuff. I guess they just didn't. You can't imagine going through them yourself.
But now, Cliff Benoit, with Chapatti's childhood friend, Louis Rosetta, standing by his side, he's able to share the things he never forgot.
A hell of a nice guy. George was the best.
Adding, he may have lost a friend all those years ago, but he's gained a new one. Brenda Mahoney, ACMi News. According to the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, more than 7,500 U.S. military personnel who fought in the Korean War are still unaccounted for nearly 70 years later.
There's been a rising number of phone calls to Arlington's police department concerning recent coyote sightings. According to police, roughly a dozen calls every day. And that's why a meeting was held July 31st at Town Hall to address residents' concerns. Arlington's Animal Control Officer, Diane Welch, was joined by John Magaranis, an expert from Project Coyote. And both dispelled some of the misinformation about the animals before a crowd of roughly 200 people. Magaranis says coyotes are here because, over the centuries, humans virtually wiped out all their natural predators like black bears, cougars, and wolves. And so it's our fault we're coexisting with them now. And still, coyotes help keep the rodent population in check, and they like to be where we are not.
Well, also, ACMi's Jeff Barn met Magaranis and Welch prior to the July meeting in an area where some coyotes live, just a few hundred yards from civilization. Even though at one time coyotes were foreign to these parts, that's now history.
And like it or not, it appears coyotes like it here, and they're here to stay.
Just a few hundred yards from the noise of our everyday existence is a more primitive and serene neighborhood in Meadowbrook Park on the grounds of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Here you'll find plenty of wildlife living right next door to all of us, including an increasing number of eastern coyotes, just like these caught on video in New York. An animal experts say has staked a claim in the northeastern portion of the U.S. and unfortunately is very misunderstood.
It's typical coyote habitat. You know, it's a lot of dense cover for them to, run and hide. I'm sure this place is loaded with rabbits and mice and rats. They'll eat, 80% of their diet is rodents. So, this is a great place for them to come and feast on all kinds of Arlington's rodents.
I love them, and we need them in this town. We have a tremendous rodent problem. People are complaining so much about the rabbits eating all their flowers and garden decorations and all the planting that they do. So the coyotes are going to keep that in check.
Animal experts say this creature rarely ever looks for a fight, and that coyotes go out of their way to stay out of ours.
And they're not going to eat your babies, they're not going to eat your grandmothers, and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you let your cat run loose at night, it's fair game. And you can't blame a coyote for acting like an animal. That's what he does. If you leave your dog out in the backyard and it's in a 6-pound dog, you can't blame the coyote if you lose your dog. And believe me, I love dogs more than anything on this planet. And the last thing in the world I ever want to see is a dog being taken by a coyote or hurt in any way. So this is really important to me, that people get that it's their responsibility to take care of their animals and not feed them to coyotes or other wildlife.
Recent research has shown that the eastern coyote, the kind of animal that lives in a setting like this in the northeastern U.S., are of a hybrid species. They're way different than their western counterparts. Their DNA makeup consists mainly of 60% western coyote, 30% wolf, and 10% dog. And an eastern coyote is bigger than a western coyote. An eastern coyote weighs anywhere between 30 and 40 pounds. A western coyote weighs 25 to 30 pounds. So obviously an eastern coyote is going to have a much bigger meal.
I just learned last week that one fox can eat up to 20 pounds of rodents per day. So let's take that to a coyote who's a bit bigger than a fox. So it's probably about 25, maybe even, I'd say 25 pounds of rodents a day. They will eat because they don't know when they're getting their next meal, right? So they're very opportunistic hunters.
Not to bash the media, but the media just hasn't been very friendly to coyotes. They repeatedly report coyote sightings under the umbrella that it's aggression. And people see this stuff on the news and they get the feeling that these are aggressive animals, and they're not.
So rather than punishing animals for their natural behavior, maybe we can protect all creatures, domestic and wild, living among us, using just a little common sense.
I love that we have so many hidden, beautiful little green spaces in Arlington. I know people are frightened. That's why I asked John from Project Coyote to do this meeting.
Diane Welsh hopes that in the very near future, we can learn to coexist with the eastern coyote. After all, this creature has roamed these ancient lands for 15,000 years. That's much longer than humankind has ever called these parts home. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barnd.
Megarana says if you see a coyote, haze or scare away the animal. How? Well, stand tall, wave your arms, and yell at the coyote, approaching them only if necessary, and maintain eye contact. That coyote will know you mean business, and that will deter them from encroaching on your turf.
Arlington residents took part in 2 major issues in the June 11th special election. One was to fund increasing costs of town services, and the other vote was to provide the funding for a new Arlington high school to ease the overcrowding and improve building conditions. This issue fueled several discussion among town leaders and residents.
But there is another group who wanted to add their opinion, students. I got the chance to see what Arlington High School is like from their perspective, visiting them in classrooms, the library, as well as the music and shop class. Here's a look at what they had to show and tell.
I love Arlington High. I love my teachers and my classes.
It's a high energy level. It's pretty full of life.
Yeah.
It's a school full of really energetic kids, and it's a school with teachers who care about the students and want them to learn.
But at Arlington High School, a sprawling campus with buildings constructed nearly every generation from 1914 to the 1980s, it's getting harder to do that, say those who are in it.
When people ask me about my school, and they're like, oh, the beautiful pillars at the front. And I'm like, you should see the inside. It's horrible.
From the triangular-shaped French room to blocked views in science rooms to the cramped band room, the sentiment is the same.
I think the renovation, just a renovation wouldn't be enough to...
Yeah, I think it took us about, 10 years to get an air conditioning unit installed in this room.
I think also in general, the school, you kind of walk around the hallways and it doesn't really always feel like a positive learning environment.
And that's why AHS could go from this to this. A $291 million brand new high school.
Having the new school says that we as an Arlington community value education and value the environment in which our students are learning.
Superintendent Kathleen Bodie and an appointed high school building committee have been working on coming up with a building plan for several years. In 2013, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges said the school would lose its accreditation unless things such as inadequate room sizes and blocked views are changed.
Some rooms are just built kind of, just designed kind of weirdly. It's just funny with there's big objects just in the way.
You don't understand how much time we spend working around the building. I have to do my labs in sections so that everybody can have some electricity. We'll make it work for now, as it is, but I think a new facility would really help us do more.
This is Old Hall, the oldest part of Arlington High School, originally built in 1914. It's a time when students weren't even required to go to high school. In fact, many didn't, working on local farms instead. But society changed, wars were fought, and the focus on education grew, and each time a new building with it. And now educators say it's time to start from scratch to serve this generation and the ones to come.
We actually have the entire body of this guitar all cut out just with this one machine.
We know that we teach differently now than we did in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We know that the demands and expectations on education have changed. And we know that this facility doesn't support even the way we are teaching now.
I think that everyone initially believed that we were going to do a renovation addition. So in terms of space, we're not really getting anything new. We're getting it redesigned in a different way.
You can look straight across and see the other one right there. So the links don't border any classrooms. They are pretty much unsupervisable, so it's where a lot of kids go when they don't want to be seen.
The proposed school would reduce hallway space and wings would be organized by subject. And it would accommodate a growing student body, 1,700 plus students, roughly 400 more than there are now.
Balcony, seriously? Balcony.
When showing these sophomore honors biology students the architectural rendering, surprise and excitement at what could be.
Okay, here we go.
That's big.
Ooh. Here's the gym.
Ooh.
It's gonna be awesome. I know I won't be able to go to school in it, but it's just really exciting to think about.
Just like people in town, some students remiss on losing part of the front lawn and the columns that grace it, but willing to let them go for the greater good.
My parents and my grandparents also went to this high school, so it's kind of sad that that history is being lost. But at the same time, I feel it might the benefits that we're going to be able to reap from it is probably worth it.
A hope that adults will think the same when voting whether or not to change their future come June 11th.
I'd say do it. I would not wish this building on any of the kids who are younger than me.
If your headlight is out, you get arrested, right? Or at least fined by the police, right? I feel like the headlight's out.
Having a nice space to learn makes people want to learn. I think that's something really important for the future.
In the meantime, they'll do as the song says. Keep on fighting till the end.
If you love to turn up the music, dance to the music, play that funky music, or any old way you choose it, Arlington was alive with the sound of music last June when the snow wasn't anywhere close to us. The leaves were green and summer wind was balmy.
ACMi News covered this annual Arlington celebration in June, and we found out there's never too many notes at Arlington's Porch Fest.
The gods of music shone brightly upon more than 225 musicians, performers, and visual artists on nearly 130 Arlington porches. From the porch on 63 Claremont Avenue featuring the Barrows. The folk music at Old Schwam Mill.
If it takes us back to another time, and maybe a quieter time and a calmer time, that's a lovely place to be.
To the more traditional tunes on the grounds of the Jason Russell House.
We like to play at the historic sites like the Jason Russell House here, and playing outdoors acoustically for the people. It's just a very enjoyable experience.
Some girls, they have the natural ease.
For Arlington's LGBTQ+ Rainbow Commission, this is their first Arlington Porch Fest Pride Stage on Academy Street.
Perfume magazine. Wear it up, write it down.
This is only the second year that the Rainbow Commission has been in existence, and our very first Porch Fest, and so we're doing a Pride stage with karaoke hosted by Jacqueline Friedman, and we're just excited to be here and see how it goes. And this is a test case.
And there's still, reports throughout the world of violence and bigotry and everything else towards the LGBTQIA community. So, it's beginning, but we still have a lot of work to do.
So whether it's karaoke, folk, bluegrass, or rock, music creates a magic that touches the heart and soul, communicating where words fail. Having it on one's own front porch makes it incredibly American. For ACMi News, I'm Jeff Barnes.
Last May, ACMi News held its first meet and greet of the year right here in Studio A. It was a chance to show Arlington residents what our newscasts are all about and meet the news team.
We also received some feedback from residents in the studio on what they'd like to see in a hyper-local newscast and how they can participate in our news department.
There's going to be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions as well. And so if we miss anything that enticed you here, then make sure that you speak up and have your curiosity satisfied.
A lot of the residents here in Arlington, I have realized, are truly attuned to what's going on with our government. And I have, believe me, I've interviewed people on the streets of Baltimore or D.C. What do you think of Mike Pence? Who's he? But when I get answers back from people in
Who
Arlington,
is he, actually?
Yeah, exactly.
What's he been doing?
Actually, that could be a good question.
It is a good question right now.
But I'll talk to people from Arlington, and I can tell, wow, you read a paper, or you know the exact budget, or you know the dollar amounts. Mm-hmm. And it just seems to me that people here in Arlington are truly involved in their community, and that's something that I have found to be very rare from where I've worked. So that's a credit to Arlington, and that just one more variable and one more reason why I'm really glad to be here. I got into journalism because I love to write. I love to tell stories. I just love to tell stories. And I'm used to anchoring in markets where, as we all know, the first 8 minutes of a newscast is not enjoyable. It's just bad news, drive-bys, fires, things like that. I like doing stories that were informative, where I would look at some research material and go, wow, I never knew that. So now I want to parlay that story into the viewer. And if the viewer at the end of my report says, gosh, I didn't know that, that is like so cool.
I was just going to explain that, James and some people may not realize, but as an anchor, when you're the anchor, you don't have to have that top story where you're going and pursuing, talking about something that you don't necessarily want to talk about. So when you're the anchor, you get to do the kinds of stories that you really want to do. Exactly. But as a general assignment reporter, you have to go and do the latest fire or right. whatnot. And some people really do like that and get the adrenaline rush. And it's good for a while. But for me, I got burnt out from that, and going and pestering people and trying to get them to, talk to us about how they feel about their, loved one just being, murdered.
What's cool about here is we are not beholden to stockholders. That's the bottom line for any local TV station or network, is the bottom line. In the old days, the news department was a money-losing proposition. It was a given. It was a write-off. It was a liability to the TV station. But it was the community identifier. And it's just as the years have gone on, I'm thinking, you know, all these commercial breaks and the longer commercial breaks and the less ratings they're getting, which is why you're seeing these extended newscasts now. That's why in Boston you have local news from 4:30 to 6:30 because they're trying to grab the same amount of ratings they used to get in the old days between 6 and 6:30. And I thought it was getting a little ridiculous when I forget where I was, but I you know, closed captioning brought to you by KO Pectate. And it's like,
so it's really threefold. So we're looking for more viewers, obviously, to be, you know, to be a presence taken in town and used as a resource for information and storytelling. We're both storytellers, and I'll indulge for a moment that you're right. Actually, it's very unusual for community access to have two professional storytellers. It's usually maybe someone who was doing government and now they've gone into maybe starting a little bit of news, and it's talking heads, you know, where if you look at our stories, we're doing visual storytelling. And then the other part is, yes, we would love to have people who are volunteers come on in and maybe learn to do, you know, some reporting of features, business stories, whatever, architecture, whatever it may be that interests you, or simply pitching us ideas or letting us know, or sending your own iPhone-generated videos.
Tell us about a couple of things that we didn't see in any of those videos that are, you know,
what?
just stuff that either mistakes that you made or lessons you learned.
James, if I had to find any mistake I've ever made on the air.
Yeah, that's
37 years, I have never made a mistake.
Yeah, that's.
I worked for an NBC affiliate in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and I had to do a satellite interview with Tom Brokaw. And there's two monitors, just like this. And I could see me here, and I sat down, and I'm getting ready to do a satellite interview with Tom Brokaw about the gangs rising in LA. So I'm sitting there, and the other monitor was empty. It had an empty chair. So I'm thinking, well, that's Tom's chair. So Tom's not ready. So they said, before we do an interview, can we get a mic check so we can get a mic level with you? And I always liked imitating Tom Brokaw. So, I figured I'd be smart and said, good evening, live from Lillehammer tonight. Welcome to NBC News. I'm Tom Brokaw, and we're going to be going to Lily Langtree. And the guy in my ear's going, idiot, he can hear you. And then I looked at the monitor, it was in the wrong monitor, and then all of a sudden he was there, and he's kind of like, never got another job at NBC again.
This was also a great opportunity to see how you, as an Arlington resident, can get involved with a community news operation that combines hyper-local focus with global awareness.
To learn more about us or to get involved, just go to our website, acmi.tv.
Well, that'll do it for this special New Year's edition of ACMi News, and thanks for being with us all this year. I'm Tyler Valancourt.
And I'm Brenda Mahoney. We certainly look forward to seeing you in 2020. And we wish you a very happy and healthy new year. Stay safe. We'll see you from Studios A and B beginning January 17th.
You can always check out our latest segments and newscasts on the web at acmi.tv/news. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ACMi News. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You'll find us at youtube.com/ACMi News. If you have any news tips for us or wish to become a citizen journalist, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at news@acmi.tv or stop by ACMI Studio A at 85 Park Avenue.